Do you ever feel like when you're speaking English and you want to use a word that you already know, but for some reason you can't remember it? What's the word? When we've all been there. So in this video, we're going to explore why that happens and what you can do about it. Before we do that, let's play a fun little game. This is a game that when you fail at it, it'll help you understand how your brain remembers vocabulary. And yes, I think you'll fail at it because I've had a lot of my students take this test and they've all failed at it. It is deceivingly easy. That means it seems easy, but it's not. Here's what we'll do. I'm going to perform 8 actions and all you have to do is just say the name of those actions that I'm doing. For example, what action am I doing here? I'm typing. Easy, right? But here's the thing, you only have 1 second to say the name of the action. The reason for that is that if you can actually name the word within 1 second, that would mean that you can actually use that word in conversation when you're speaking English, and it just won't take you forever to search that word up in your memory. Anyway, are you ready now? Pay close attention. What am I doing now? Easy, right? I'm clapping. How about now? Look at my eyes. I'm blinking. Look at my shoulders. What's this action called? I'm shrugging. What am I now doing with my hand? I'm scratching. What am I now doing with my head? I'm nodding. And how about this? I'm shaking my head. Now look here. I'm frowning. And lastly, this is like when you're trying to read something but it's too small, so you're gonna do this with your eyes. I'm squinting, and I gave you more than 1 second there. So now 3 things. 1, that was fun, right? So subscribe and like this video if you thought that was fun and useful and interesting. Number 2, how did you do? Why don't you post in the comments which actions did you manage to name within 1 second before I named the action myself? And number 3, unless you're a C2 level, you probably didn't get a perfect score in that exercise. And that's okay. We'll come back to your results in a little bit because they'll tell you a lot about how your brain is remembering vocabulary. So now, forgetting words when you speak English. Why does that happen? First of all, let me just say that if you forget a word, congratulations, you're doing it right. It means that you're learning. Forgetting is a part of learning. There's no learning without some forgetting. Forgetting is a natural part of the process of learning. For any given word that you encounter for the first time, you are going to forget it a few times. And then you're going to have it refreshed in your memory another few times. This is a cycle that culminates when you finally acquire the word, when it finally gets solidified in your memory and becomes part of your active vocabulary. And we'll explore a little bit further what that is, what active vocabulary is, in just a little bit. So earlier I said that the game was deceivingly easy. And I told you that that means it looks easy, but it's actually not. It's difficult. So if you know that word beforehand, well, that's great. If you don't, that might change now. You see, because you just heard that word deceivingly for the first time, and because I explained its meaning to you, you now know it. However, you might forget it, and to be honest, fairly fast, maybe within the next 48 hours, until you get it refreshed in your memory one more time. After you had it refreshed a few times, then you will acquire it. And again, this is when it gets solidified in your memory. Once you finally acquire it, you will be less likely to forget that word again. Now, let's consider this phenomenon of forgetting from a different angle. When you forget a word, it doesn't mean that you don't know it or can't recognize it anymore. It just means that you can't access, recall, remember the word easily and spontaneously. But Max, so if I know a word, why can't I remember it when I actually want to use it or need to use it? Well, it's for the same reason why we feel that sometimes our listening ability is better than our speaking ability. Recognition versus recall.
Recognition versus what? Recall?
Yes, recognizing is 90% easier than recalling. Picture this. You're on the bus on your way to work. As you look out the window, you can recognize all the individual places, the building, the house, the park. Everything is familiar to you. As a cognitive task, recognition is pretty much effortless. However, what if, when you get off the bus, I asked you to remember each individual building and house that you saw on your bus ride? How many places would you be able to recall? Not as many, because the act of recalling is difficult. It's a demanding cognitive task. Recognizing is easy, recalling is difficult. Speaking involves using words that you can easily recognize but need to make an effort to recall. So let's now talk about that game/test we did in the beginning. I actually tested one of my intermediate level students with this game, and I asked her, which of the 8 words do you know? The words that she knew were clap, blink, scratch, nod, and frown. The words that were completely new to her were shrug, squint, and shake one's head. So she actually knew the words shake and head. She just didn't know that you could use those individual words together in a phrase. So she didn't know the collocation to shake one's head. So where am I leading with this? Knowing is one thing. Being able to actively use these words in speech is another. When I had her play this game, she couldn't say the word frowning without having to take some time to think. So this is a word that she knew, but it just wasn't available and accessible to her within 1 second. And here is when we can draw a distinction between the words that we know. On one side, the words we know and can use, and on the other side, the words we know but can't use. This is called active vocabulary and passive vocabulary. Our passive vocabulary is always going to be larger than our active vocabulary, but still small when compared with the vastness of the vocabulary we don't even know. Where am I going with this? Well, for speaking, we rely on our active vocabulary. Our passive vocabulary is essential for understanding. Because our passive vocabulary is larger than our active vocabulary, we can understand more English than we can actually produce or speak. Now that we know why we forget words when we speak, let's talk about what we can do about it so that we don't forget at least so easily. So basically, we have 2 paths of action here. Number 1 is create your own strategy to interrupt the forgetting curve. A smart person a long time ago came up with the concept of the forgetting curve. It is a useful model for visualizing how our memory works. If you learn a new word today, 2 days from now, you will have forgotten it a little bit. And 7 days from now, you will have forgotten it a little bit more. Now, if I ask you 30 days from now, what was the word that you learned today? You will probably have already forgotten it completely. Being aware of this, we can interrupt the forgetting curve right before these specific points. We can force ourselves to review or repeat the word right before we were starting to forget it. Very clever, right? This is called spaced repetition, and apps like Memrise and Anki help you with this. But that's not the only way that you can achieve this. You can be creative and come up with your own way to help your memory and to improve your vocabulary retention. Something I've learned not to do as an English fluency coach is to talk about very specific ways that you can do things, because what might be useful for me or for someone else might be useless for you. So for that reason, I stick to general principles only. And that's exactly what the next way in which you can improve vocabulary retention is. And in my opinion, is a far superior method for vocabulary retention. You just don't worry about forgetting vocabulary at all, and instead worry about getting as much speaking and or listening practice as you can. Using your English regularly will help your vocabulary retention more than anything else. So speak and listen to English as much as you can. If it's daily, fantastic. If it's a few times a week, that's great. Conversation practice helps you retain words longer, and it also helps you learn more words more efficiently. Think about the process of learning a new word. What does that look like for you or for the average learner? So you first hear the word or read the word for the first time, but then within the next few days, you might forget it. Then you get it refreshed in your memory once again, then you forget it again. Maybe then you will familiarize yourself with it one more time. And then after a few of these cycles, you finally acquire it. But you can make this process easier. You significantly shorten this process when you engage in regular English practice. You activate the productive part of your brain. It puts your vocabulary retention and sense-making machine to work. What do I mean by this? Well, imagine you're talking with someone and they say, he did the job so carelessly. And you go, carelessly. So I know the words care and careful. This less part of the word, don't we use it to mean without? As in homeless or jobless? If someone is careless, they don't have care. They don't care. A careless person. They do something carelessly. That makes sense. You start to figure out the meaning of words through context and through considering the words that you already know. Carelessly is now a word that is available for you to use. Retaining a word will be much easier when you learn it in an authentic, meaningful situation. You will remember this word because it's attached to a moment or a situation that you will have a memory of. Because aren't there some words that remind you of the moment that you learned them? Like where you were, who you were with, the feeling associated with that situation. These are words that you won't ever forget. And this is one of the benefits you get when you constantly engage with English. So to summarize this point, what can you do to not forget words so easily? Use your English more. It will, 1, improve the conditions in which you learn new vocabulary, and 2, it will interrupt the forgetting curve I mentioned before in a natural way. The more you engage with English, the more opportunities you're going to have to absorb new vocabulary and to consolidate existing vocabulary. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more. Now watch my next video and find out what you can do to actually reach true long-lasting fluency in English. If you want to understand English, you need 3 things. You need to know the words, know the grammar, and know the sounds. You mostly get this by listening to a lot of English. Now, if you want to speak English fluently, you need 2 things.